Well, there seems to be a current event that just won't go away. I never wanted to make videos about current events. I wanted to make videos about general points, things that would be true and wouldn't date and wouldn't rely on knowledge of what was in the news at the moment. But I suspect that this is going to be something that one way or another people aren't going to forget for a while. And while I'm actually going to do my best to avoid referring to it directly, what I would like to mention is something which I am surprised I haven't seen anywhere, even though I've watched quite a lot about this. Now, people talk about the phenomenon of foreshadowing or predictive programming, and I've seen many people pick apart or dissect so many different books and TV shows and movies and demonstrate quite well that if there wasn't direct foreknowledge, there was at least some kind of oddly prescient premonition that referred to things which we now find are very much shaping our reality. And one of the things that I was very surprised not to see, although it must be out there somewhere, is somebody going through the TV series Lost for all of the parallels that can be drawn between what has happened, what is happening, and what may well continue to happen. So I'm not going to go through all of this exhaustively, and I am guaranteed to have forgotten perhaps even some of the major plot points that could be seen as 100% perfect matches for things that have occurred and are continuing to unfold in reality here. But I'm going to list a few of the things that I have thought of and just get them out there for anyone else who wants to dive into each one of these things in more detail. And with that, I will leave a small warning to say that while these things are not only interesting and very often necessary to go through, because there may well be a very useful purpose in figuring out what is going on, what might be about to happen, and therefore we're allowing ourselves the insight so that we might know what to prepare for, should it happen. However, if a lot of different things seem to be pointing to the same eventuality, then I think there comes a point where we need to stop going through everything with a fine-tooth comb when the picture has become clear enough, where the end goal of all of this seems to be looming into view. Then we need to just deal with what we can, not waste any more time cross-referencing, corroborating, and re-examining things which are clearly just going to be, say, a different way of confirming the same answer. So I think I'll get on with those parallels. Maybe you've thought of some of them already. And then I think at the end, for a more general and concluding point, I'll get back to the idea of foreshadowing or predictive programming and what that is and how it is occurring. So for starters, maybe, even if it's sometime in the future, a year or even 10 years from now, if somebody is listening to this, I'm not going to even say the words you might be expecting, but I'm going to try and use synonyms. And I like the word malady because I think it's the same in French, a maladie, which could translate exactly as some kind of sickness, let's say. And that leads me on then to some of the other theories that have been obviously commensurate with some of the airborne ideas of what might be at play here. And one of those things, of course, is a transmission tower on the island, the mysterious island of Lost, where Rousseau, the French lady, left a tape looping with a message saying something like, "Ils sont tous morts. Il a les tués. Il est dehors maintenant. Brennan a pris les clés." So she's saying something about how on this shortwave radio that they're picking up on their CB, that there's something outside. I don't know if it's Brennan or a monster or something she doesn't name, but it's killed them all. Or is it her? Has she gone mad? And so, did she and her companions go mad on the island and kill each other? Is there one of them left? Some of them left? She's locked herself in to some kind of panic room or a numbers station. And we all count the numbers these days, don't we? Whatever they might be. So the lost numbers, I've looked at them again. Nobody could ever figure out what the numbers meant. Was it an equation? Was it a series or a sequence? What was the key to it? Well, she says Brennan has taken the keys. And the names of all of these characters in Lost mean something as well. So it's not just Rousseau, but there's John Locke. and he was an English philosopher as far as I remember. But what did he do? Well, he found Desmond in the underground bunker, and he was punching in the numbers. And he didn't know why he was doing it, but he knew he had to do it. He just had to follow the procedure, like a lot of us have had to do for many years of our life. Just follow the procedure. And if you don't follow the procedure, what happens? If you don't just toe the line, do as you're told, punch in the numbers every day, well, then it goes into lockdown, doesn't it? And you start seeing these symbols that seem oddly familiar, but you don't quite recognize them. And they might come from Egypt. And then there was an incident, some kind of perhaps electromagnetic frequency. There was also military that had been on the island, and military trying to get back onto the island. There were cages and prisons and psychological experiments. There were mind control experiments. There was Dharma research. Now that's referring to Indian type religion, and there is a donkey wheel in that, and the wheel turns and the earth moves and the world turns. But also Dharma is very similar to another kind of research agency which created the internet. Now people started to question the reality. Were they time traveling? Was there a fracture in time? There's boats, there's planes falling out of the sky. There's games going on. There's black and there's white. There's a chessboard or a checkerboard or a backgammon. Backgammon is a very old game. The name literally means back game, because the object of the game is to be the first to get your checkers or players off the board. It goes back as far as ancient Mesopotamia. Mesopotamia is the fertile ground which gave birth to the Sumerian, Akkadian, and Babylonian civilizations. Mesopotamia literally means between the two rivers, and these two rivers are the Euphrates to the west and the Tigris to the east. They flow through modern-day Syria and Iraq into the Persian Gulf. Senet, spelt either S-E-N-E-T or S-E-N-A-T, was another table game played by the Egyptians. It is known as the game of passing. The name literally means passage or gateway, which might give us some more room for interpretation there. Like chess or drafts or checkers, these games are played worldwide, on a table, on a checkered board, both literally and metaphorically. There's a very interesting connection between the Chancellor of the Exchequer, which is the finance minister of the United Kingdom, and the name of the country home of the Prime Minister of the United Kingdom, known as Chequers. But I'll have to leave it until another video to demonstrate the connection between the Exchequer and checkers. Now, just as in our reality, in the so-called real world, back in Lost, there are people on the island trying to figure out what's going on. But what is the island? Is it the Earth? Are they in heaven? Did they die? I mean, I don't know if any of you have considered that, but I know somebody did put a video out saying, "Did I die?" You know, and these are apparently crazy theories, but you got to consider anything, because everything's gone so crazy. Everything is on the table to consider, and if you don't consider what might have happened, then you might be just immediately dismissing the most logical explanation. So is it heaven? Is it hell? Is it purgatory? The question isn't really resolved. But while they're there, there's a lot of other mysteries that go on. Desmond wears a gas mask. He's in a biosuit. He is injecting himself with a serum. Why is he trying to do that? To give himself some kind of protection against something he can't see, he can't smell, he can't hear, he can't touch or taste. But he believes it's out there until this group of people come knocking on his door. And he says, "Are you here to take over from me? Why aren't you wearing your gas masks? And aren't you afraid of the contagion?" They say, "What contagion?" So, I mean, everything there's so many odd parallels, and I'm sure that I've forgotten many of them. But there's science experiments, and of course there's fertility. There is the rhesus negative, or is it rhogam serum. We don't know if it's for the good of the baby or if it's to harm the baby. There are some infiltrators into the group. There's an other group. There's people in disguise. So there's all kind of subterfuge and, parallel stories and backstories. And so maybe now I should start talking about stories and why it is that so many stories, whether it's in movies, books, TV series, or whatever, is being told again and again, that there's parallels to be drawn, that there's apparent foreknowledge of things that are being shown to us and have been shown to us. So why are these things happening? Well, a large element of it is hypnotism. We live vicariously through the characters we see on screen. We identify with them. This is why we kind of misremember what exactly occurred, and we remember an emotional aspect or our feeling of what happened at the time. So that draws us in, but I suppose to stick rigidly to the foreshadowing, how is it happening? How is it that the script writers, the screenwriters, the people from not just 5, 10, 20 years ago, but sometimes 1,000 years ago, or 2,000 years ago, or more, were writing stories that apparently are coming true now? Well, I want to say that it is a magic trick. I was going to say it's kind of a magic trick. It is one. And magic isn't real, but it is real. And the best magic tricks are performed by doing a hell of a lot of preparation in advance, by setting it up a long time before the audience ever comes into the room. So maybe I'll do a video at some stage about the monkeys in the cage parable. But one thing I just want you to think about, and perhaps just accept straight away, no matter what age you are, whoever you are listening, all of us, we just got here now. In relative terms, I mean. And we've barely just sat down. And then the magician walks into the room, as though it's the first time he's been in there. Well, he never said that, but we all just assumed it. And that's the funny thing. We all make a hell of a lot of assumptions without ever even consciously acknowledging, even to ourselves, that we've made an assumption. So here's one of the biggest assumptions that I just want to explain, and it's a very simple trick. But simple doesn't imply effortless. All the greatest magic tricks, those ones which seem impossible, are never impossible. They just required a huge amount of effort to set up ahead of time. So this kind of effort, which requires the kind of planning and patience, it just seems so unthinkable to us in the frame of mind that we all tend to have, that we just instinctively discount it as impossible without even realizing that we've just dismissed the most likely solution, without even considering it. And it's as simple as this. Sometimes tricks are set up not just days or weeks, but sometimes years in advance. And we think that equates to impossible. But that just means that we don't think that the payoff is worth all the time and effort invested into it. But that's our mindset. And we assume that everybody else has the same mindset. And there are people that don't, and there are entities that don't. Now, to give you some kind of an example, I can't remember what this is from, and perhaps I should go look it up, but I'll just mention it now. It's getting a bit long, and I'll just say this. There was something about somebody putting either a gold coin or something inside a tree when it was a young sapling, and he pushed it into this cut that he made, and then he helped the wound heal over, and then the tree grew and the gold coin got bigger and bigger and bigger. And then years later, when it was a big, big tree, he came along back to this village where people were around, and he said, hey, do you know that these trees, you can often find gold in them? And he demonstrated this by cutting down the tree and producing the gold coin out of it, or maybe he allowed somebody else to find it. And they were so impressed, he was then able to say, all right, well, you'll probably find the same with all the other trees, but if you let them grow a bit bigger, they'll have obviously a better yield of gold. So he was able to make a lot of money out of it. Nobody would have considered that 30, 40 years or even 20 years ago that the guy would have done that. They just would have immediately dismissed that notion as out of the question. So that's pretty much the simplest, albeit bizarre sounding explanation for foreshadowing. It's basically the scripts were written first, and then later they were enacted according to those scripts.